Welcome to our class on Chassidus. We're going to be learning today a very special Chassidic discourse from the Rebbe. The name of the Chassidic discourse is called להבין ענין Simchat Torah, to understand the idea, the spiritual idea, the Kabbalistic idea behind the celebration that we're having this week coming up, which is called Simchat Torah, the celebration of the Torah. This Chassidic discourse is unique because the Rebbe said this Chassidic discourse Mוצאי Simchat Torah, the night after Simchat Torah, in the Rebbe's room in the year Tafshin Lamed Ches, 42 years ago. So the Rebbe begins the Chassidic discourse with the statement, להבין ענין Simchat Torah. We have to understand what's this whole celebration of Simchat Torah. Now what's the question, what does it mean, what's this idea of Simchat Torah? Because if you give a look, how is Simchat Torah celebrated? Simchat Torah is celebrated as follows. We come to the shul, we say special blessings, then we open the ark, we take out the Torah, and we know the Torah is a parchment which has a band around it, it has a mantle around it, a cover around it. Normally we open the Torah and we read it, and everyone listens, you follow along in the Chumash. Here, we don't read the Torah, we just take it out, we dance with the Torah with its cover on. So the question is like this. We all know what is the Torah spiritually. So it says, Kihi chachmaschem uvinaschem. This is the intellect, this is the wisdom that we have. So intellect and wisdom, how do you connect to something which is intellectual or wise? You read it, you discuss it, you meditate on it. But so if that's the case, the celebration you should have been great speakers, great Talmudic educators, and give tremendous lectures about the Torah. That should have been the Simchat Torah, and it would have been very enjoyable from an intellectual perspective. Nevertheless, how do we do that? No, we don't have any classes, there's no dissertations, there's no meditations. It's specifically through dancing with the Torah. And the question is, why is that? But what's unique is you see that what happens when you dance with the Torah, what happens is like this. Who dances with the Torah? Everybody. There's no differentiation how wise you are, how learned you are, or the opposite when it comes to celebrating the Torah. Anyone can walk over, hold the Torah, and dance with the Torah. Even, let's say, someone that's simple, hasn't really spent time so much studying, or someone doesn't have the intellectual abilities to meditate on the Torah. He celebrates the same way. And not only that, people that aren't necessarily so involved in learning Torah, throughout the year, you don't see necessarily their connection with learning Torah. But on Simchat Torah, everybody's connected. Everyone is able to celebrate Simchat Torah. And we find another major idea when it comes to the fact that everyone can celebrate Simchat Torah. Because what do we dance with? So we know the Torah, there's Torah Shebeksav, the written law, which is the 5 books of Moses, which is in the Torah that we dance with. But then you have Torah Shebal Peh, you have Mishnah, you have Talmud, you have Kabbala, you have mysticism, you have Midrashim. There's so much more to Torah, the whole Torah Shebal Peh, which quantitatively might be even bigger. We don't find on Simchat Torah anyone dancing with a Talmud, with a Mishnah, with a Medrash, even with a book of mysticism. Now why is that? Because what's unique about Torah Shebeksav, the written law, the Torah that's in the 5 books of Moses, the Torah that we dance with, that in order to fulfill your obligation of learning Torah, anything other than the 5 books of Moses, you have to understand what you're saying. You have to understand it, you have to comprehend it, you have to meditate on it, you have to analyze it, you have to discuss it. That's the way to learn Torah. Torah Shebal Peh. However, when it comes to Torah Shebeksav, is you're reading Chumash, the prophets, the writings, anything goes under the category of Torah Shebeksav, even if you don't know what you're saying, you have fulfilled your mitzvah. So in other words, what that makes everyone equal. Why? Because when it comes to Torah Shebal Peh, if you don't understand, you haven't learned. And the deeper you understand, that's the deeper the connection. When it comes to Torah Shebeksav, since you fulfilled your obligation, whether you understand or you don't understand, so anyone that opens the Chumash to read Chumash, or any of the other 5 books of Moses, or the prophets and the writings which is part of Torah Shebeksav, you fulfilled your obligation. So it shows there's no difference between one person and another. That's another powerful component of Torah Shebeksav, and that's why we specifically dance with the Torah, to show that our connection to Hashem through Torah, there's no hierarchy. everyone has the same connection. And matter of fact, when anyone gets an aliyah, you make a blessing. What's the blessing you make? You make the blessing that God chose us and gave us a Torah, which underscores that everybody is connected to Hashem through Torah, even if you don't know what you're saying. Another idea we have to understand in reference to Simchat Torah, when do we celebrate Simchat Torah? So we celebrate Simchat Torah in America or outside of Israel, anywhere outside of Israel, the day after Shmini Atzeres is its own holiday of Simchat Torah. In Israel, we celebrate on Shmini Atzeres. Shmini Atzeres and Simchat Torah is the same day. But the question is, when did we receive the Torah? We received the Torah on Shavuot. So seemingly, Simchat Torah, the celebration of Torah, should have been when? On Shavuos. Not on Shmini Atzeres, which is connected more to Sukkot. What's the connection with Simchat Torah and the holiday of Sukkot? So the Rebbe brings a famous medrash that says as follows, that reality is that the Yontiv of Shmini Atzeres should have been 50 days after the Yontiv of Sukkot. Why? Because we see Pesach. When do we celebrate Pesach? In the 15th day of the month of Nisan. When is Shavuos celebrated? 50 days later. So just like Shavuos is 50 days after Pesach, so when it comes to Hachag Shmini Atzeres, it should have been the same 50 days after the holiday of Sukkot. So why do we celebrate it right afterwards? And the Medrash says as follows. The Medrash says like this, that when are we celebrating Sukkot? We're celebrating Sukkot at the end of the summer and the beginning of the winter. Now, what happens at the end of the summer and the beginning of the winter? So people are leaving, and there's no time to come and go. Why? Because in the winter it's hard to travel. However, in the summer, Pesach, it's summer. It's much easier to travel. It's longer days, so it's not a problem. Come back in 50 days. It's an enjoyable time to travel. Everyone vacations in the summer. After Pesach, Shavuos time, matter of fact, the most people go to Eretz Yisrael. Why? Because it's good weather. So because it's good weather then, so it makes sense. All right, you had a beautiful Pesach, and guess what? We'll have a next holiday will be in Shavuos 50 days later. However, when it comes to Sukkot, it's the winter starting. We can tell everyone go and come back. It's hard to travel in the winter. The days are shorter, etc. And the Medrash gives an example like this. Medrash gives an example that there was a king, and he had many children, daughters actually, that some were living closer, some were living further away, and one day they all came to visit the king. So after they all came to visit the king and they had a great time, so he says like this, that the ones that are living close can come and go anytime they want. They're closer. The ones that are living further away, it's very hard for them to come. So since you already came now, let's make a celebration right now. So based on this, the Medrash uses that as a mashal, an example, to say as follows. On Pesach, we come to visit Hashem, to celebrate Pesach. So guess what? The king says, go, come back, we'll have another celebration 50 days later. However, when it comes now to the Yontiv of Sukkot, if you're going to come back, it's going to be hard for you to come back. So therefore, let's celebrate Simchat Torah right now. And so based on this, the Medrash actually finishes off and says as follows. This is the reason why. Simchat Torah we celebrate when? Shmini Atzeres. So and again, in Israel it's the same day. In America, outside of Israel, it's 2 separate days. Why? Because the day, like in the mashal that the children came, the daughters came to visit their king. What is that day? That day when they came was the one day. What's the famous one day? They came Yom Kippur. And they wanted to make a celebration, a continued celebration. So therefore this continued celebration is when? Is Simchat Torah, which is Shmini Atzeres, which is the one day which we celebrate like the day of Yom Kippur. So based on the Medrash, it's a practical reason why Shmini Atzeres and Simchat Torah is celebrated now, because we came to celebrate the one day of Yom Kippur, and afterwards we needed a few days to get ready for Sukkot, so we're ready to leave. So the king says, guess what? I would love for you to have another party, but to bother you to come back and forth, stay now, let's do now Simchat Torah. That's what the Medrash says. So the Rebbe is now going to explain Kabbalistically this whole idea on a very, very much deeper and spiritual level, the reason why we celebrate Shmini Atzeres Simchat Torah connected to the one day of Yom Kippur on a very, very spiritual, Kabbalistic level. And the Rebbe says as follows. The Rebbe says if you give a look, all the Yom Tovim in the month of Tishrei are connected to Achas, to one. And it's just like they came that one day to the king, and the king says, fine, celebrate one more day. So the Rebbe says that all the Yom Tovim of the whole month of Tishrei is connected to one. So the Rebbe starts as follows. What's the first Yom Tov we have in Tishrei? We have the Yom Tov of Rosh Hashanah. On Rosh Hashanah, what's the mitzvah? The mitzvah of the day for Rosh Hashanah. The mitzvah of the day for Rosh Hashanah, we know mitzvah sayoyim is b'shofar. The mitzvah is to blow the shofar. You know, that's how Rosh Hashanah is unique and different than every other mitzvah. Not only that, the Rambam writes that in reference to the mitzvah of blowing the shofar, it's actually a gzeirus akasav. It's a commandment in the Torah, which technically doesn't even have a reason, which is the above reason. So it's connected to the oneness of Hashem. So Rosh Hashanah, again, is connected to oneness, blowing the shofar, which connects us, l'mayla mitam v'das, without reason, without logic, gzeirus akasav, to the infinite Hashem. That's Rosh Hashanah. Let's go with the next Yom Tov. The next Yom Tov is what? Yom Kippur. So we know Yom Kippur is Achas B'Shana. It's one day in the year. But the Rebbe says it's not only one day in the year, but it's one on three levels. What three levels? Level of, I'll say it in Hebrew, I'll translate it. Oilam, which refers to the world, which refers to space. Shana, which refers to year, which refers to time, and Nefesh refers to soul. And the Rebbe is going to show us the way Yom Kippur is connected to oneness in time, in space, and in the soul. Why? So, for example, the avodah of Yom Kippur, the spiritual service in Yom Kippur, where did it take place? We celebrate today, we don't have the temple, but where did Yom Kippur take place? It took place in the temple, but specifically in the Holy of Holies, when the Kohen Gadol, the holy highest priest, would go in there and he'd bring the Ketores. So what place was it? It was the one place, unique place of the whole world, the Kodesh HaKadoshim, which resembles the idea of Makayim. So you see, within Yom Kippur itself, in Makayim, had a uniqueness. There was one set place where we celebrated Yom Kippur, which was in the Holy of Holies. Also, we know that Yom Kippur is called Achas B'Shana. It's the only holiday that's one day of the year. It's the one day of the year, and in other words, so it's connected to oneness in time. The oneness in time. Who is the avodah done? Who does the avodah in Yom Kippur? The Kohen Gadol does the avodah. Now, the truth is he's a messenger from all of us. It's not his avodah. But the fact is, it is being done by the Kohen Gadol. And we know the Torah says that Aaron was separated to serve Hashem in the Holy of Holies, which, since it's done by one person, it's on a level of nefesh, of soul. It's one soul. So again, so you see Yom Kippur is oneness, both in space, Kodesh Kodashim, both in time, one day of the year, and both in nefesh and the soul, which is the Kohen Gadol. That's Yom Kippur. So we did Rosh Hashanah, we did Yom Kippur. What is Sukkot? So we know Sukkah, for example, right when Sukkah starts, what's the first mitzvah the moment Sukkah starts? Because Lubavitcher you don't take till the morning. But the minute Sukkah starts, you have the mitzvah of going into the Sukkah. Now we know the Sukkah resembles unity, because the whole Klal Yisrael could be in one Sukkah. As the verse says, Kol Ezrach b'Yisrael yeshu b'Sukkos. It's possible for all of us to get along, and we should be able to sit in one Sukkah. That's in terms of the mitzvah of Sukkah is connected to one. It's not one, not only one, it's oneness. It unites everybody. Then you have the mitzvah of the four species, the Elul of Esrig and Adasim and Haravos. So we know, for example, the whole idea of the Lulav and Esrog and Adasim of Haravos is to draw down, which we learned in the previous Kabbalah class, the oneness of Sukkah, the powerful oneness of the Schach of the Sukkah, but Pnimius internally within us. But specifically, in every one of the four species, does you have the unity. And specifically, where do we see that? In the Esrig, which the Torah tells us that you have the greatest oneness. As a matter of fact, when the Torah speaks of the four species, the first one it says, "Lakachtam lachem pri eitz hadar." The first one the Torah speaks about is the esrog, and the reason why it's first is because it represents unity on the greatest level, because we know the esrog is one that lives on the tree all throughout the year, which means it tolerates all four seasons, but more importantly, and we discussed already at length in the previous Kabbala class, that the esrog actually grows from each one of the seasons. Every one of the different seasons makes the esrog the beauty that it is. And the goal of the esrog, the unity in the esrog, that draws down actually into every one of the other four species, that they should have the unity. And we know the lulav we already discussed last time, it's one, even though it's multiple branch, but it's one. The same thing, the hadassim, they go three together. The aravais, they grow together in a patch. So you see that they all have the level of unity. Now, what's our goal with the lulav and esrog? We take all four different ones, we put them all together, which represents, we know, four different types of Jewish people, and the goal is, as the verse says, V'yasu kulam agud achas, we should become really, really one, and the purpose of one is that we should do lasais ritzoncha b'leiv shalom, to do the will of Hashem all together with one heart. Now, so what do we see clearly? That when it comes to all the Yom Tovim in the month of Tishrei, it's all about oneness. Starting from shofar, one mitzvah to blow the shofar. Yom Kippur, on all three levels of space, in the temple, time, once a year, in the soul, the Yom Kohen Gadol, and in Sukkot, both the Sukkah is unity, and the four species is to unify all the physical components, but more importantly, to unify all Klal Yisrael. But then the Rebbe says, so the goal is unity. The goal is we should be unified. We should all really be one. Not only one externally or some kind of like a banner that we're one, but really, really to be one. So the Rebbe says in order to accomplish, to have true oneness, and not only oneness just for the moment, but that it should last, of all different types of Jews, that everyone should get along. Everyone should get along. Whether you agree, disagree, whatever your opinion is, we all love each other, we're all one. That happens through, and here's the key that creates that unity is something which is called in Hebrew truva. When we're tashuv, when we return to Hashem, when our focus is on what Hashem wants, and we're willing to do whatever Hashem wants, that will give us the power to do truva. So again, we're going to go into the idea of truva, because you see, truva is key. Unity is the goal. And that's the real beauty of Am Yisrael, when we're unified. But in order to have unity, not only at a moment, or at these unique festivals, but it should last a whole year, and it should last, and it should be strong, we need to have the avodah of truva. Now, why is truva so powerful? That truva can give us unity not only while we're experiencing truva, but throughout our year. And Rebbe explains like this. Because truva has a certain magic ingredients. The magic ingredient is as follows. There's something which is called me, you, him, her, yesterday, tomorrow, before, after. These are all the dividing terms. But then there's something which is called, it's all one. Not only it's all one, there's no room for division. Truva, in order for truva to happen, which means, think about it, you did something wrong, and you're saying to Hashem, I'm sorry. Or to another person, I'm sorry. And you want to create forgiveness. But what do you mean? You did something wrong. Truva has the power to take you to a place, to a higher place. In that place, there is no differentiation between one person and the other, between past, present, and future. In Hebrew, it's called, Truva reaches a place, Lamaila mihischalkas. In that level, on high, which we hopefully elevate ourselves to, there's no divisions. Me, you, him, her. We want to do Ratzon Hashem. It's all about what Hashem wants. And because Tshuva takes us to a place which is above differentiation of different past, present, future, me, you, him, and her, etc. There's no division in that place. Therefore, when a person decides they want to do Tshuva, there's no process. It's b'shaita chada v'riga chada. It happens at that moment, that second, which is amazing. I mean, you see people, whether yourself, other people, and you see yourself, sometimes you go, how did it happen? All of a sudden I decide that's it. I'm transforming my life. I'm turning over a new leaf in my life. Where did it happen? Which means all the meditation, all the planning. So there's times when you need that. But when a person decides they want to do truva, when a person decides they want to come home, whether they want to come home physically, spiritually, even if there was a disconnect, even if there was major conflict, truva, there's no limits. And truva happens in a split second. And that's the power and the magic and the gift of truva. Truva, again, reaches a place, there's no differences, and because of that, it happens b'shayta chada v'riga chada. That's the tremendous gift of truva. Now, what does that mean practically? And the Rebbe explains. We all know that when Moshe Rabbeinu went to heaven, Hashem gave him the first commandments. And then, unfortunately, we sinned. And we did tshuva. We said to Hashem, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. We want to have our connection back alive again. And Moshe Rabbeinu went back to heaven and brought us down the second set of commandments. Now, let's think about this. The Rebbe analyzes. So we have the luchos harishonos, the first commandments. What is the first commandments? Hashem gave us a Torah. Hashem decided to give us the gift of Torah. The second commandments represents the Torah. But how did we get that? It wasn't a gift. That came through tshuva. So the first commandment represents Torah as a gift from Hashem. The second commandments is a gift through our doing tshuva. Now, when did we receive the first commandments? A Matan Torah. Shavuos, the holiday Shavuot. When did we receive the second commandments? Yom Kippur. Now, let's look at the difference between these two processes. When Moshe Rabbeinu went to receive the first set of commandments, he went up to heaven. He went up the mountain. How many days was he there for? We all know 40 days. 40 days and 40 nights. Besides the fact that before that, we counted 7 weeks. Shiva Shavuos Tisperlach. So before he even went up, we counted 7 weeks. 49 days. Then Moshe Rabbeinu went up for another 40 days. So there was a process of 7 weeks. There was a process of 40 days, and so on and so forth. Now, with the second commandments, to be clear, Moshe Rabbeinu went up, and he was there for 40 days. But however, why was he there for 40 days? He was there to present to Hashem our sincere truva. For 40 days, he was beseeching Hashem that we have said, I'm sorry, we want to return to Hashem, we want to return to our relationship, and we want to do truva. And Hashem said, great, I'm accepting the truva, and this is powerful. Hashem accepted our truva b'simcha, with happiness, v'leiv shalom, and with a complete heart, which is important. Anytime you forgive, you have to forgive with happiness and with a complete heart. What happens after Hashem forgave the Jewish people? The 10 commandments, the luchos shniyos were given, boom, b'shayta chada, in a split second. There was no preparation of 7 weeks. There was no preparation of 40 days. The second commandments we received b'shayta chada. Why? Isn't there a process? Meditation, prayers, 40 days, 7 weeks, counting, mikvah, spirituality, meditation, Avinu Malkeinu, shofar, anything? No, because when it comes to truva, it's b'shayta chada. Why is that? Why is it that truva happens in a second? Because truva reaches a place, and I'll say it in Hebrew, I'll translate it, Lamaila mimedida v'hagbala. It reaches a place which is above any measurements and limitations and calculations. Now, why is that? Why is that? This is a very important point. The Rebbe explains, because true truva reaches, and I'll say it in Hebrew and I'll translate it, b'pnimius v'atzmas hanefesh. When a person does truva, it's not coming from your mind or from your heart. It's coming from the internal and the essence of your soul. And that's key to truva. So if you're thinking out, I'll do truva, not going to work. if you feel like, oh, I'm inspired, I'm going to do truva, it's not going to work. If you think you meditate on it, it's not going to work. It's not going to be as strong. It's not going to last. Truva has to come from a soul searching, from the essence, and from the internal part of your soul. When a person decides from the essence and the internal part of the soul of doing truva, guess what? There's nothing that will get in your way. You'll do whatever it takes. That in the past you said it's impossible. You know why it's impossible in the past? Because you weren't doing it from the essence of your soul. When you're willing to do from the essence of your soul, you'll reach above any nature, any limits. Why? Because the pneumius, the atzmas and nefesh, the internal and the essence of your soul, is above any divisions, any limitations. It's on the level of achas. It's in the level of true oneness. And that's why b'shaita chada, with 1 second, v'riga chada, 1 moment and 1 second, because it's coming from the essence of your nefesh. Because you reached achas, the oneness in your nefesh, you were able to reach the highest places. And that's the reason the Rebbe says, that's why, because it comes from the essence of your soul, the oneness of your soul, so therefore you're able to unify all Jewish people. Because you're coming from your oneness, you connect to the other person's oneness. From the elders, from the youngsters, from the sophisticated, from the simple people, however you want to call them, any profession, as the Torah says, the wood choppers, the water carriers, everybody is standing unified. When you're coming from your etzem nefesh, everyone is unique. Everyone is unique, but everyone's together. And as the verse says, nitzavim, we're standing. And the ultimate of standing is what? Nitzav melech, we're standing like a king. What does it mean we're becoming a king? And Rebbe explains that Jewish people become kings and owners on the darkness of the world. And the Rebbe makes it practical. Once we become unified and we become owners of the world, you know what happens? Then we're entitled to get what? Tremendous blessings of Hashem. And what are the blessings that we get? We're written and we're sealed for a good year and for a sweet year, a revealed good year, but not just out there in dreamland, but in real practical ways. And why is that? Because once you reach such a deep place, there's no difference between physicality and spirituality, the top and the bottom. It affects all worlds and all levels. And it's able to draw down the greatest blessings from the highest places to the lowest places. And based on this, Rebbe explains, very simple, what it says, what the Medrash said. Now he's explaining the Medrash. What does the Medrash say? That one day, they all came to see how the king is doing. And king said, oh, let's make a yontiv, let's make a holiday, and let's make it a one holiday. Now, what day did they come? We came in Yom Kippur. Because what's Yom Kippur? Yom Kippur is the day that we do truva, which is the one day of the year when we reach the oneness in space, Kodesh HaKadoshim, in time, once a year, in our soul. So because we came that one day a year, and we came from the essence of our soul, that caused to bring down the oneness, this tremendous celebration of Simchat Torah, which is also on a level of one. It's also one. It's the only one Simchat Torah of the year. But what brought about that oneness of the Simchat Torah? By us coming with our etzem nefesh and Yom Kippur and doing truva. So here you see the power, the tremendous power of truva, the power of the luchos hashniyos, the second tablets that we received on Yom Kippur. That place, when you go to the place of truva, that allows us to go to the essence of our soul, and that allows us to reach the greatest places possible and draw down the greatest blessings. Now, obviously, we come to a place of achas to oneness, and over there's no division. Everybody's one. Everybody's equal. There's no past. There's no present. There's no future. It's all one. It's all one. It's all great. It's amazing. It's beautiful. It's exciting. It's all full of blessing. And only great, powerful, beautiful things in your life. So the Rebbe said that's a tremendous inspiration. That's amazing to reach such a place. But the goal is, you have to take that oneness and we have to bring it down into the division of the world. And here comes the fusion. It's not just, it's great. Yom Kippur, we reached the one place. Wow. Comes Simchat Torah with the oneness. Oneness with Hashem. Truva. from Simcha. That's great, it's wonderful. But we have to draw it down into the physical world. Like, for example, we all know what happens after Yom Kippur. We make a physical sukkah. We take a lulav and esrog, the 4 species, physical things. We dance with our feet. Why? Because we have to draw down the powerful oneness into the physical world. All 4 walls of the sukkah should feel it. All the 4 species should feel it, the oneness. Dancing, our feet, our body, the streets should feel the oneness. And like the Rebbe says, it says in the Torah, Atem netzav mayim kulchem, we're all there together. But nevertheless, after we're all there as one, the Torah says 10 different types of Jewish people, because we have to draw down the oneness into the wood chopper, the water carrier, that every single one who you are has to be all unified on one level of nefesh. Now that is in terms of nefesh. That means all nefashos, even though they're different, they look different, they feel different, have to be united as one. But then the Rebbe says also, not only in nefesh do we have to bring down the oneness into nefesh, but we also have to bring the oneness into shana, space, into time. In other words, the oneness of Yom Kippur, where we reach the level of truva, the oneness of Simchat Torah, we have to bring it into the world. That everything that we do, as the Rebbe always quotes, B'chol masecha, every single action we do, B'chol drochecha, everywhere we go, it should be noticeable in our actions, in our oneness, that the Yom Kippur oneness, the truva oneness, the Simchat Torah oneness is in every single action, in every single space that we are throughout time, throughout the year. And this has to go through the whole year. And it has to become stronger and stronger every day. As we know, Ani Havaya Loi Shanisi, Hashem doesn't change. And the oneness has to be every part of us, but in all throughout the year. And by doing that, what we do is we actually create the revelation of the true oneness. That just like we said before, the esrog is pre-Eitz Hadar, not only does it tolerate all the seeds, and it actually grows from it. So what happens when we take that oneness and we bring it down into our life, into everything that we do, so the echad of Hashem actually becomes greater. Because it's not just a echad out there, but it's an echad that you feel and experience in every part of your life. And Rebbe finishes off, and he says that it should be the will of Hashem, that it should be fulfilled in every single one of us, amongst all the Jewish people, that we should have a beautiful, good year, and we should be blessed with blessings that should come down to this physical world, with family, children, abundance, in sustenance, and physical sustenance, spiritual sustenance, and we should do it with simcha, with joy, and gladness of heart. And it start right away from after Simchat Torah. As we know, after Simchat Torah, we say Yaakov halach darkei. Yaakov went on his way, and we go not only in the way of mitzvahs, but also whatever we have to do in the world, anything that we need to do, because the fact is, after Yom Kippur, we're busy with mitzvahs, building the sukkah, the 4 species, the Shana Rabbah, dancing, and so on and so forth. But afterwards, after Simchat Torah, we have to get ready to bring this powerful energy into the world. And we should penetrate every general thing that we have to go through, any specific thing we have to go through, with the original oneness that came from where? From the Pnimius and the Etzem our Neshama, which, as we know, that our internal essence of our soul is connected with the Pnimius, which the internal and the essence of the infinite life of Hashem. And as we bring that out, the goal is to bring that into the world. And Rebbe finishes off with a very powerful blessing, and he says like this: since we're coming from Simchat Torah, and we know Simcha, joy, has the power to break any boundary. That means anything that you're stuck with, physically, spiritually, emotionally, Simcha can break anything. Because why? Because Simcha reaches a place where there's no limits, there's no boundaries. So because we're coming from Simchat Torah, we have that gift of Simcha that has the power to break through any obstacles that's holding us back from living an amazing, great life. This will hopefully break, the Rebbe says, anything that's limiting us from the first Rebbe says our galus pnimi, our internal galus. Because before you can deal with the galus of the world, you have to deal with your own galus. Every one of us have certain internal things that's blocking us from living a truly happy life. We have to be willing to break it. Simcha can break it. Mitcham Simchat Torah, you'll dance from the essence of your soul, and you'll take that simcha, and you'll get out of your galus pnimi, whatever's holding you back from serving Hashem, learning, praying, studying, doing mitzvot, being happy, whatever's holding you back. We should break that galus pnimi, and then there is obviously for sure to break the physical galus, the literal galus, and we'll all merit, hopefully very, very soon, that we will see the return of Tzion, Yerushalayim, with the compassion of Hashem, with the Gula Hamitis Vashleima, with the redemption, the true one and the complete one, through Mashiach Tzidkenu, who's going to come and take us out of Galus, and he's going to bring us to Yerushalayim Er Kodesh, and he'll build the Beis Hamikdash, and he's going to gather all the Jewish people from all over the world, and then what's going to happen is we're all going to speak one language. Not only physically one language, but spiritually, we're going to have one message. It's all going to be, we want Hashem. Beloved Shchemecha, we're going to serve Hashem all together. V'hoisa l'Hashem amlucha, Hashem will be the ultimate king of each and every one of us, and that will be the ultimate unity. So as you can see, this is a very, very powerful Chassidic discourse. We're getting ready to celebrate Simchat Torah, and Rebbe teaches us the most powerful idea of Simchat Torah. Simchat Torah is really all about oneness. And the way we get to the oneness is going into our etzem haneshama. And we go to our etzem haneshama, we do real truva, we get to the etzem, the oneness of Hashem. And we draw down that oneness of Hashem. It will give us the greatest simcha. And we have the greatest simcha, we'll be able to get through anything we have to get through, and we'll all merit, as the Rebbe says, the greatest gifts of the Gula Primis, our internal redemption, and then hopefully, God willing, the Gula Klalis right afterwards, and we'll all merit to celebrate maybe even Simchat Torah in Yerushalayim Ir HaKodesh. I want to wish you all a good yontif. You should have a great Simchat Torah, lots of simcha, lots of happiness, and be connected with Hashem in a beautiful, meaningful, and in a oneness fashion. Good yontif and happy Simchat Torah.